The elementary school auditorium buzzed with parents shuffling programs and whispering to each other. Calder Brooks sat stiffly in the third row, his work boots still bearing traces of dried mud from the day's job. The smell of cheap coffee and floor cleaner hung in the air. To his right, his mother-in-law Ruth adjusted her pearl necklace while his wife June scrolled through her phone, barely looking up at the stage where children were preparing for the spring performance. Calder checked his watch. 7 minutes until Clover solo. His daughter had practiced for weeks, her small voice filling their kitchen every evening while he made dinner. June had been too busy to attend most of those impromptu performances. God, they need better lighting in here, Ruth muttered, her voice cutting through the ambient noise. Half these kids look like they re-performing in a cave. June snickered, finally putting her phone down. At least that would hide some of these outfits. Did you see Melissa's daughter? That dress looks like someone's skin to mermaid. Calder kept his eyes on the stage. 8-year-old Clover stood in the wings, her fingers fidgeting with the hem of her blue dress, the one he'd ironed twice that morning to get the pleats just right. Her eyes found us in the audience and he gave her the thumbs up they practiced. Her shoulders relaxed slightly. The music teacher tapped the microphone. Next up, we have Clover Brooks singing My Own Path. Clover walked to center stage. The spotlight catching the glitter in her hair clip, another morning ritual Calder had perfected over time. Standing before the microphone, she looked impossibly small yet somehow determined. Ruth leaned over, her perfume overwhelming as she whispered loud enough for nearby parents to hear. She looks like a stray dog on stage. June's laugh was immediate, sharp like glass breaking, just like her father, useless. Several parents seated nearby chuckled politely. Calder felt each laugh like a physical weight pressing against his chest. He kept his face neutral, jaw tight, eyes locked on his daughter. Clover began to sing, her voice thin but clear. Calder washed her hands, gripped the microphone stand, knuckles white with concentration. She'd been so nervous that morning, begging to stay home. Nobody will listen anyway, she said. He spent 20 minutes convincing her otherwise. As the final notes faded, the audience applauded. Clover stepped back, then suddenly moved forward again and grabbed the microphone. I want to thank the person who saved me, she said, her voice stronger now than when she'd been singing. My dad, she pointed straight at Calder. The auditorium fell silent. June shifted uncomfortably beside him. Ruth cleared her throat. Calder felt something unfamiliar pull at the corners of his mouth, a smile that reached his eyes for the first time that evening. He nodded once at his daughter. A gesture meant only for her to eye in that moment, surrounded by people who had just laughed at their expense. Calder recognized something in the way June and Ruth exchanged glances. Something calculated, something that had been building for a long time. The walk home was quiet, just Calder and Clover hand in hand under streetlights that buzzed and flickered. June had left with Ruth in her mother's car, claiming they needed to discuss some things. They had not specified what things, but Calder had stopped asking months ago. You really meant what you said back there? Calder asked, helping Clover step over a puddle from the afternoon rain. About you saving me. Clover looked up, her face serious in the orange glow of the streetlight. You did. Remember when I could not breathe that night? Calder nodded. The memory of Clover's asthma attack 6 months ago was still raw, her lips turning blue. The inhaler empty. The frantic drive to the emergency room while June was unreachable. Mom said I was being dramatic. Clover continued, but you knew that's my job. Calder said simply to know when something's wrong. They walked the rest of the way home in comfortable silence. Calder unlocked the front door of their modest 2-bedroom house. The living room was dark just as they left it. No sign of June or Ruth after tucking Clover into bed with a story and checking her inhaler was full on her nightstand. Calder sat at the kitchen table with a glass of water. He pulled out his phone, scrolling through messages from the past few months. June 6:42 p.m. March 11th. Working late. Do not wait up. June 7th 15 p.m. April 2nd. Meeting with school counselor about Clover. Eat without me. June 9th 36 p.m. April 17th. Helping mom tonight. Back tomorrow. Each message was shorter than the last. Each one he now realized had coincided with Clover asking where her mother was. Each one had come on evenings when he sat alone helping with homework, making dinner, checking for monsters under the bed that a knock at the door pulled him from his thoughts. He opened it to find Tamara Tam from next door, holding a plate of chocolate chip cookies. "Thought you might want these," she said, stepping in without waiting for an invitation. Tam had been their neighbor for 3 years. Single mother of 2 teenagers. She worked nights as a nurse and slept days. Heard some nasty things said tonight. "You okay?" Calder set the plate on the counter. "You were there." "My niece was in the chorus." Tam leaned against the refrigerator, arms crossed. Her scrubs had cartoon dogs printed on them. "Your mother-in-law has a voice that carries when she wants it to." Ruth S. always thought June Mary beneath her. Calder took a cookie, not because he was hungry, but because it gave him something to do with his hands. Power company lineman is not exactly what she had in mind for a pageant queen daughter. Tam's eyes narrowed. That counselor was there too. "What's his name?" "Klein. Grady Klein." Calder's voice hardened. "Elementary school counselor. June says he's been helping with Clover's adjustment issues." "Funny." Tam said, though her expression suggested nothing amusing. "I've seen him helping with a lot of things lately. Mostly helping himself to long talks with your wife in the school parking lot." Calder's hand tightened around the glass of water. "How long?" "A month. Maybe more." Tam straightened. "Look, I mind my business, but I also see what I see. And what I see does not add up." After Tam left, Calder checked on Clover again. She was asleep. One arm wrapped around the stuffed elephant he bought her for her 7th birthday. June had forgotten that birthday, claiming a migraine. He found medicine receipts from a restaurant 30 miles away later that week. He sat on the edge of Clover's bed, careful not to wake her. Something was happening in his home, something that had been building for months. Like rot in the support beams of a house, invisible until the moment everything collapsed. The memory came back with surprising clarity as Calder drove to work the next morning. Clover at 5, struggling to breathe, her tiny fingers clutching at her throat, the panic in her eyes, the empty inhaler, the voicemail from June, out with a friend. Back late, he'd driven 90 miles an hour to the hospital, carried Clover through the emergency room doors, stayed next to her bed until morning. June had shown up at noon the next day, smelling of wine and wearing the same clothes. "You overthinking," she said when he questioned her absence. "She gets dramatic sometimes, like her father." Now, 3 years later, that moment felt like a warning he should have heeded. After his shift, instead of going straight home, Calder drove to Gideon's gym. Gid's fitness occupied a converted warehouse on the edge of town. The parking lot was half full of the afterward crowd getting in their evening routines. Gideon March spotted him immediately from behind the front desk, his broad shoulders and military short hair unmistakable even across the room. "Look what the cat dragged in," Gid called out, loud enough to turn heads. He'd always been Calder's opposite that way, where Calder observed, Gid announced, where Calder considered, Get acted. "You finally taken me up on that membership." Calder shook his head, just needed to talk. Something in his tone must have registered because Gid's smile faded. He nodded toward the back office. "Something's off," Calder said once they were seated in Gid's cluttered office. Protein-shaped containers and fitness magazines covered most surfaces. "Has been for a while." Gid leaned back in his chair. "With June, with everything," Calder ran a hand through his short, dark hair. "June, Ruth, this counselor at Clover School. It's like I'm watching a play where everyone knows their lines, except me. What's this counselor's deal? Great decline. Transferred here last fall. Works with troubled kids." Calder made air quotes around the last words. "June says Clover needs extra help. Says she's having trouble adjusting." "That kid." Gid snorted. "The one who thanked you in front of the whole school last night does not sound troubled to me." "She's not." Calder's voice was firm. "She's smart. Quiet sometimes, but smart. Notices everything. Like her old man." Gid studied his friend. So what's really eating you? June S. been coming home late. Taking calls outside. Deleting texts. Calder counted off each point on his fingers. Ruth S. been around more. Watching me like she S. taking notes. And this counselor keeps calling the house. Asking for June specifically. You think she S. stepping out? Calder S. jaw tightened. I think something S. happening. Something bigger than an affair. Gid sat forward. So what are you going to do? Walk away. That's your usual move when things get messy. This is not about me. It's about Clover. Then you better get your head straight. Gid's voice hardened. The Marine drill sergeant briefly visible beneath the gym owner exterior. You re too damn quiet sometimes. This AI not the time. Calder nodded once. Absorbing the truth in his friend's words. All his life. He dealt with problems by removing himself from them. His father's drinking. His brother's gambling debts. Even his first serious relationship in college when the fighting started. Calder simply stopped showing up. But Clover changed everything. She was the one thing he would not walk away from. I need to know what's happening. He said finally. All of it. Then you better start paying attention. Gid replied. To everything. Later that night, after Clover was asleep, Calder sat in his truck outside the house. Through the kitchen window, he could see June talking animatedly on the phone, gesturing with her free hand in a way she never did when speaking to him. Her face was alive with an emotion he had not seen directed at him in years. As he watched. She laughed, head thrown back. Eyes crinkled. A different person from the cold, distant wife who had barely acknowledged their daughter's performance the night before. Something inside Calder hardened. Not with anger or even hurt, but with resolve. You would find out what was happening in his home. Not just for himself, but for Clover. And this time, walking away would not be an option. 3 days later. Calder woke at 2:18 a.m. to the blue glow of a phone screen. June was sitting up in bed. Her back to him. Shoulders hunched protectively around her phone. The light illuminated her face in sharp relief or expression intent. Focus in a way it rarely was when she spoke to him. He kept his breathing even, watching through barely open eyes as she typed rapidly, deleted, then typed again. A message appeared on her screen. The contact simply read K. Tonight was good. Need to move faster though. Time's running out. June's reply came quickly. Working on it. He does not suspect anything. Ruth says she's ready whenever you are. June glanced over her shoulder. Calder closed his eyes fully, maintaining the rhythm of sleep. When he heard her set the phone down and lie back, he waited 10 more minutes before opening his eyes again. The ceiling fan turned lazily above them, casting rotating shadows across the room. Beside him, June slept or pretended to her back, turned toward his side of the bed. They had not touched in months. K. The initial sat in his mind. Klein. Grady Klein. The next morning, Calder called his supervisor at the power company. Frank, I need to take some time off. Everything okay? Frank had been his boss for 8 years since Calder first started climbing poles fresh out of his apprenticeship. Family stuff. Calder kept his voice neutral. I've got 3 weeks of vacation saved up. You sure you need all of it? Frank sounded surprised. In 8 years, Calder had taken exactly 5 sick days and 1 week of vacation. Storm season's coming. I'll be back before then. Calder watched through the kitchen window as Clover waited for the school bus. Her backpack almost as big as she was. Just need to take care of some things at home. After hanging up, Calder took out a new notebook from his work bag. On the first page, he wrote, June, phone messages with K. Klein at 2:18 a.m. References to moving faster and time running out. Ruth involved. That he paused, then added, possible affair with school counselor or something else. Over the next week, Calder began rearranging his life around June's patterns. He woke early and went to bed late. He tracked her comings and goings in the notebook, noting when she claimed to be shopping but returned without bags. Or when she said she was with Ruth, but her mother-in-law's car was nowhere near their usual spots. He started a second column in the notebook, one for Clover. He documented her questions about where her mother was, the disappointment when June missed dinner again, the way she stopped asking June for help with homework and came straight to him instead 0.7 days into his surveillance. Calder found something unexpected in the trash of brochure for a lawyer specializing in family law and custody agreements. The paper had been crumpled, but the lawyer's name was clear. Marion Wallace, known locally for representing women in difficult divorces. That night, he added to his notebook, custody lawyer brochure in trash. June planning separation, why the secrecy, why involve Klein? The pieces were beginning to form a picture, but it remained incomplete. He needed more. The dashboard camera was small, barely larger than a matchbox. Calder installed it under the passenger side of June's car during the 15 minutes she spent in the shower each morning. The camera activated with motion, uploading footage to cloud storage he could access remotely. Little insurance policy, he muttered as he secured the final wire. That afternoon, he parked 3 blocks from Clover's elementary school, timing his arrival 20 minutes before dismissal. From his vantage point, he could see both the main entrance and the staff parking lot where June typically waited. At 3:05, June's car pulled into the parent pickup line. Calder watched through binoculars as she stepped out. Not toward the student waiting area, but toward the side entrance where staff exited. Grady Klein emerged 2 minutes later, his button-down shirt and khakis a stark contrast to the other male teachers in the building. He was younger than Calder had expected, late 30s, perhaps with the kind of carefully maintained stubble that suggested hours in front of a mirror. June touched Klein's arm, leaning close to say something. He nodded, glancing around before placing his hand at the small of her back in a gesture both familiar and possessive. Calder took out his phone and snapped several photos. Neither of them noticed. When Clover came out 5 minutes later, June was back in the parent line, checking her watch with an impatient expression. From a distance, Calder could see Clover's face light up when she spotted her mother, only to fall when June barely looked up from her phone as she opened the car door. The next day, Calder arrived at school pickup early, this time engaging one of the other waiting parents in conversation. "First time picking up?" asked a woman with twins in tow. "Have not seen you in the line before." "Usually working," Calder replied. "Power company keeps me on poles most days." "Oh, you must be Clover's dad." The woman's face brightened with recognition. "She mentions you all the time in my son's reading group." "Funny, she does not talk much about her mom." Calder's expression remained neutral. "That right, kids, you know," the woman shrugged. "Clover so bright, though, always helping others. My son struggled with reading until she started working with him. Wish the counselor could see that side of her." "The counselor, Mr. Klein," she lowered her voice slightly. "Between us, he's put Clover in his special group. For kids with challenges at home," she made air quotes around the words. "Most parents would be upset, but your wife seemed to agree with his assessment." Calder's hand tightened around his truck keys. "When did this start?" "A few months back. Around Christmas, I think. Your wife and Mr. Klein have been in close contact about it." She gave him a curious look. "You did not know." "Must have slipped my mind," Calder said evenly. "Thank for letting me know." That evening, he added to his notes. June and Klein placed Clover in special group for kids with challenges at home. Building a case. For what? 2 days later, he got his answer. While June was grocery shopping, Calder checked her laptop. The password was still Clover's birth date. She never bothered to change it despite his repeated warnings about security. "I enter email drafts folder." He found a half-completed message to Marion Wallace, the custody lawyer, following up on our conversation about full custody. "As discussed, I believe I can demonstrate emotional neglect based on Mr. Brooks' persistent absence and failure to participate in Clover's emotional development. Mr. Klein has agreed to provide his professional assessment of the home environment's impact on Clover's well-being. My mother can corroborate instances of the draft ended there." Calder read it 3 times, each word burning into his memory. Full custody, emotional neglect, professional assessment. They were building a case against him. June, Ruth, and Klein working together to take Clover away. "Dad, can I ask you something?" Calder looked up from the sandwich he was making for Clover's lunch. It was Saturday morning, and June had left early, claiming a hair appointment that he now knew was fiction based on the dashboard camera footage showing her car parked outside Ruth's house. "Anything, kiddo." He spread peanut butter on wheat bread, just the way Clover liked it, thin layer, no lumps. Clover sat at the kitchen table, legs swinging beneath her chair. "Is it bad if you keep a secret for someone, even if the secret makes you feel yucky inside?" Calder set down the knife. "Depends on the secret. Some secrets are okay, like surprise birthday presents. Others are not." "What about when Mr. Klein came over?" She traced patterns on the table with her finger, not meeting his eyes. "When you were not home, something cold settled in Calder's stomach." "When was this?" "After my doctor appointment last month, Mom said I had to go to my room and stay there until they were done talking. She said it was grown-up stuff and not to tell you because you get angry." "Were you alone with him?" "No. Mom and Grandma were here too." Clover looked up finally. "They were all talking in the living room." "About you." Calder kept his expression carefully neutral despite the anger building inside him. "What do they say?" "Grandma said you have anger problems. That you yell and break things." Clover's brow furrowed. "But you do not." "Not ever." "What else?" "Mr. Klein asked me if I was ever scared of you. If you ever hurt me." Her voice was small now. "I told him no, but he kept asking the same question different ways. Mom told me later I should have said yes." Calder felt something inside him shift, a line crossed that could never be uncrossed. They were not just planning to leave him. They were actively coaching his daughter to lie. To help build a false narrative of abuse or neglect. "Clover, listen to me." He knelt to her eye level. "You did the right thing telling the truth. Always tell the truth even when people want you to lie. Especially then." "Understand?" She nodded solemnly. "And one more thing. If Mr. Klein ever asks to be alone with you, or if he makes you uncomfortable in any way, you find another adult. A teacher, the principal, anyone. Promise me." "I promise." "Are you mad?" "Not at you." He brushed her hair back from her forehead. "Never at you." After Clover went to play in her room, Calder sat at the kitchen table. The half-made lunch forgotten. His notebook lay open before him, filled now with dates, times, observations. Evidence of a conspiracy taking shape around him that he needed to act. Not with the rage burning inside him that would only play into their hands, but with the same methodical precision he applied to his work on power lines. One wrong move there meant death. One wrong move now meant losing Clover. He pulled out his phone and called Gideon. "I need your help," he said when his friend answered, "and it needs to stay between us." The plan came together with surgical precision. Calder created secure cloud storage for his growing collection of evidence recordings from the dashboard camera showing June and Klein together. Screenshots of text messages. Notes detailing June's absences during Clover's important moments. He documented Ruth's involvement. Her visit to the house when he was supposedly at work. The night Clover spent at her grandmother's house that coincided with meetings between June and Klein. The money she'd withdrawn recently that matched the retainer fee. For Marion Wallace, you rebuilding a case. Gideon observed examining the organization of Calder's evidence one evening in the garage away from the house where June might overhear. Like a lawyer or a hunter, Calder replied, his voice calm despite the storm building inside him. Setting up for the right shot. What's the end game here? Divorce. Calder shook his head. This is not about June and me. This is about protecting Clover. They're trying to cut me out of her life with lies. I need to make sure that does not happen. And if June tries to explain it away, or if Klein denies everything, that's why I need more. Calder tapped his notebook. Tamara's been helping. She's seen things from next door. As if summoned by her name, there was a soft knock at the side door of the garage. Tamara slipped in, still wearing scrubs from her hospital shift. Got something, she said without preamble. She handed Calder her phone, open to a text conversation with another parent. Lisa, S on the PDA says there's a parent-teacher night coming up. Klein, S giving a presentation on identifying troubled home environments. Thought you'd want to know. Calder studied the message. When next Thursday, all parents invited, Tam took her phone back. Perfect stage, would not you say? For what? Gideon asked. That Calder's expression hardened. For the truth. Over the next week, Calder refined his approach. He installed a small audio recorder in Clover's backpack after explaining to her what it was for. Like a safety net, he told her. Just in case someone says something that makes you uncomfortable. The recorder captured 3 separate instances of Klein attempting to lead Clover into damaging statements about her home life. Each time, she stuck to the truth. Did her dad ever go away for a long time? Klein's voice asked on one recording. He worked on power lines. Clover responded simply. But he's always home for dinner. Except when there's a big storm. Then he has to help people get their lights back on. And that makes you sad when he's gone. No, he's helping people. Mom's the one who's never home. There's a shuffling sound on the recording. Then Klein's voice again, redirecting. Let's talk more about your dad's temper. He does not have one. Everyone has a temper, Clover. Not my dad. He says getting mad does not fix problems. It just makes new ones. Each recording strengthened Calder's case while simultaneously breaking his heart. His 8-year-old daughter was being manipulated, pressured to turn against him. Yet she remained steadfast in her loyalty. 2 days before the parent-teacher night, Tamara brought over one final piece of evidence. She'd been at the same coffee shop as Ruth and overheard a conversation with another woman, a conversation about custody strategies and making sure Calder has no standing. They're planning to file next Monday. Tam said, her voice tight with anger. After the school event, Ruth was bragging about how blindsided you LLB. Calder nodded once, absorbing this information. They would not know what hit them. My ex tried the same thing, Tam said quietly. Used my night shifts against me. Claimed I was an absent mother. Almost worked too until his girlfriend got cold feet and told the truth. She touched Calder's arm lightly. I got you. Whatever you need. What he needed, Calder realized, was to end this not with a whisper or a compromise, but with such conclusive evidence that June, Ruth, and Klein would have no path forward with their plan. The night before the school event, after June had gone to bed, Calder sat at the kitchen table with his notebook and recordings. He compiled an edited audio file, not manipulated, but curated to show the full scope of the conspiracy against him. Ruth mocking Clover at the recital, June calling him dead weight, Klein telling June, after custody is yours, he'll fold the truth presented without commentary. Simple, devastating, final. It ends tomorrow. He whispered to the empty kitchen. One way or another. The elementary school gymnasium have been transformed for parent-teacher night. Rows of chairs faced a small stage with a podium. Display boards showcasing student work line the walls, fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting everyone in an unflattering pale glow. Calder arrived early, sitting in the back row. In his pocket, a small Bluetooth speaker paired to his phone. In his hand, a remote trigger to activate it. On his face, the same neutral expression he'd worn for months while piecing together the truth about his wife, his mother-in-law, and the school counselor who had conspired against him. June arrived with Ruth 15 minutes later, neither looking in his direction as they took seats near the front. Ruth wore a navy blue dress that screamed respectable grandmother. June had chosen a conservative blouse and skirt, the perfect image of a concerned mother. Grady Klein entered from a side door, nodding to several parents as he made his way to the front row. He whispered something to June that made her smile, a genuine smile that never appeared when she spoke to Calder these days. Principal Devon welcomed everyone, thanking parents for attending. Teachers gave brief updates on classroom activities. Normal, routine, predictable. Then Klein took the podium. Good evening. He began, his voice smooth with practiced authority. Tonight, I'd like to talk briefly about an important topic, recognizing when children need extra support due to challenging home environments. Calder watched June and Ruth exchange satisfied glances. This was their moment, the foundation for the custody case they would file on Monday. Klein establishing his expertise. June positioning herself as the protective mother. Ruth reinforcing the narrative. As a counselor, Klein continued, I see children who struggle with various home situations. Sometimes the signs are subtle. A child might become withdrawn or overly attached to one parent at the expense of a healthy relationship with the other. A murmur ran through the audience, parents mentally checking their own children against these vague descriptions. Other times we might see a child who seems well adjusted on the surface, but is actually compensating for instability at home. These children often form strong attachments to authority figures they perceive as safe. Calder's hand closed around the remote in his pocket. Klein was describing Clover without naming her, painting her relationship with Calder as a warning sign rather than the loving father-daughter bond it was. Klein paused, scanning the room with practiced concern. As educators and parents, we have a responsibility to notice these signs and take appropriate action. Calder pressed the button. The Bluetooth speaker in his other pocket activated, projecting clear audio throughout the quiet gymnasium that Ruth's voice filled the room. She looks like a stray dog on stage. June's laugh followed, just like her father, useless. Parents shifted uncomfortably, looking around for the source of the audio. At the podium, Klein froze mid-sentence. The recording continued, Ruth's voice again. We need to document every time he works late. Make it look like a pattern of neglect. June, Grady says emotional neglect is harder to disprove than physical. We just need to build enough doubt. Klein's voice, unmistakable. After custody's yours, he'll fold. Men like that always do. Then we can figure out the next steps. The gymnasium had gone completely silent except for the recording. June stood abruptly, her face drained of color. Ruth clutched her purse to her chest. Klein gripped the podium, knuckles white. The last clip played Klein's voice from just yesterday's session with Clover. If you tell the judge or dad scares you sometimes, you'll be helping your mom. Do not you want to help your mom? Clover's voice, small but clear, but that would be a lie. Dad never scares me. Klein, sometimes we need to say things a certain way to help the people we love. A wave of shocked whispers spread through the gymnasium. Parents exchanged horrified glances. A teacher in the second row stood up, her face flushed with anger. Is that our counselor? She demanded, pointing at Klein. Coaching a child to lie. Principal Devon rushed to the podium, attempting damage control. Please, everyone, let's remain calm. But the damage was done. Klein stepped away from the podium without a word, walking quickly toward the exit. June stumbled after him, grabbing his arm. Their hushed argument was visible to everyone, though their words could not be heard over the growing commotion. Ruth stood in the middle of the chaos, attempting to salvage the situation. It was taken out of context, she announced to anyone who would listen. It was just a joke, for heaven's sake. Nobody was buying it. Parents who had children in Klein's special groups were particularly vocal, demanding answers. Calder remained seated, watching it all unfold. The trap had sprung perfectly, catching all three conspirators at once. He felt no triumph, only a cold certainty that he'd done what was necessary to protect his daughter. Principal Devon tried to regain control, tapping the microphone. In light of these developments, we'll adjourn for the evening. Mr. Klein will be placed on administrative leave, pending an investigation. Across the room, Calder caught Tamara's eye. She gave him a subtle, not acknowledgement of a plan well executed. Outside in the parking lot, June caught up to him. Her carefully applied makeup now streaked with tears. How could you? She hissed, grabbing his arm. You've ruined everything. That recording ruined everything. Calder replied evenly. Those were your words. Your plan. I just made sure everyone heard it. It was not what you think. Monday, he cut her off. That's when we refiling for custody, right? Using Klein's professional assessment as evidence, claiming emotional neglect. His voice remained steady, betraying none of the anger he felt. You were not just leaving me, June. You were trying to take my daughter. June's face crumpled. Not with remorse, but with the realization that her careful planning had collapsed. My lawyer will still. Your lawyer will drop you the minute she hears that recording. Calder stepped back. It's over. As he walked away, he heard Ruth's voice shrill with desperation. June, do not just stand there. Do something. But there was nothing left to do. The truth had been spoken plain and undeniable in their own words. Child Protective Services arrived at the school the following morning. Calder met with them voluntarily, providing copies of all his evidence, the recordings, the dashboard camera footage, the notes documenting June's absences, and Klein's inappropriate counseling sessions. This is unusually thorough, remarked the caseworker, a tired-looking woman with kind eyes. Most parents we deal with are caught off guard. I've had time to prepare, Calder replied simply. News spread quickly through the small town. Grady Klein submitted his resignation before the school board could fire him. The district superintendent launched an investigation into his counseling practices with other children that June's attempt to file for custody failed spectacularly. When presented with the evidence, Judge Morales did not even need to deliver it. Mrs. Brooks, these recordings clearly show an attempt to manipulate a custody proceeding through false claims and coaching a minor to lie. The judge's voice cut through the courtroom like a blade. This court takes a very dim view of such behavior. June's lawyer, not Marion Wallace, who had indeed dropped her as a client, attempted to argue that the recordings were taken out of context. The judge was unmoved. The context seems quite clear to me, counselor. Later that week, Calder did something that June, Ruth, and Klein had never anticipated. He released the audio to a parenting forum online, not maliciously, but methodically, the same way he gathered the evidence. Within days, it had gone viral. Father records wife plotting custody scam with school counselor. Calder did not participate in the online discussions that followed. He did not need to. The truth spoke for itself, just as he intended. The custody hearing was brief. Calder was granted full custody of Clover. June received limited supervised visitation rights. Ruth was banned from visitation entirely after the judge heard additional recordings of her disparaging Clover. After the ruling, in the courthouse hallway, June approached Calder one last time. Her carefully constructed image had crumbled, the designer clothes replaced by something simpler, the perfect makeup gone. Please, she said, her voice breaking. She's still my daughter. Calder looked at her, really looked at her for the first time in months. He saw not the pageant queen he'd fallen for, nor the manipulative woman who plotted against him. He saw someone desperate, finally understanding what she'd thrown away, that he said nothing, no anger, no forgiveness, no acknowledgement. He simply turned and walked away toward Clover, who was waiting with Tamara down the hall. You okay, kiddo? He asked, kneeling to her level. She nodded, solemn but secure. Can we go home now? Absolutely. 3 weeks later, Clover's school held another performance. This time, Calder sat in the front row alone. Clover sang the same song as before, but with a confidence that had not been there the first time. When she finished, the entire room erupted in applause, standing ovation led by teachers who had heard what happened, by parents who had been at that fateful parent-teacher night. Afterward, Gideon clapped Calder on the shoulder as they watched Clover talking animatedly with classmates. Who's useless now? He joked, though there was a seriousness beneath his words. Calder almost smiled. Almost spring turned to summer. Calder and Clover settled into a new routine, just the two of them in the house that now felt more like a home than it had in years. They hiked on weekends, Clover naming plants and birds she learned about in science class. Calder taught her how to fish, how to change a tire, how to fix the leaky bathroom faucet. Simple things that formed an unspoken bond between them. June had moved out of town after the third supervised visitation, when Clover had asked her why she wanted her to lie about her dad. Ruth had relocated to Florida. Her reputation in the small town irreparably damaged on a warm August evening. Calder sat on the porch steps, watching as Clover rode her bike up and down the sidewalk. Tamara appeared with a pitcher of lemonade and 2 glasses. Thought you might need this, she said, setting the pitcher between them. Clover's getting good on that bike. Practice, Calder replied, accepting a glass. She's determined. They sat in comfortable silence, watching Clover navigate the slight hill at the end of the block. "Quite good, huh?" Tamara finally said. Calder looked around at the peaceful street, at his daughter riding confidently, at the home that was now truly his and Clover's. For the first time in months, perhaps years, his shoulders relaxed fully. "Quiet," he said, the ghost of a smile touching his lips and permanent. As the summer evening faded into dusk, Calder called Clover in for dinner. She raced up to the porch, breathless and laughing. Her hand slipped naturally into his as they walked inside, father and daughter, moving forward one steady step at a time.